Sarah.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going good. It's nice to meet you. I
Oh,
feel so strange because when I got started with this, I kind of reached out to my friends and people that I knew, being really safe. And so when you contacted me, I was like, oh, it's someone I don't know, and I got kind of shy. I was like, well, what are we going to talk about? I don't know anything about you, but I'm so excited to get to know you. And you have your own motherhood podcast. And I want to hear about that. But tell me about you. How are you? Tell me about
good.
yourself.
Yeah. So I am currently pregnant with our second.
Congratulations.
So, thanks. Yeah, I am about 34 weeks. So
Oh, wow.
it
Okay.
is getting close.
Yeah,
I
you
still have
are.
some time, but not too much time.
Yeah. How's this pregnancy compared to your first one?
A lot different. So I don't really know like what has changed or shifted or anything. This time it's a boy. Last time it was a girl. So who knows if that has anything to do with it. But with my girl, it was just a lot more like uncomfortable and like swollen and just kind of like, out of breath with like a lot of things and stuff. And this time, like, honestly, if it wasn't for my belly getting bigger, like I'd have no idea.
Really?
So, yeah.
Okay, so you're just smooth sailing. You're right. You're doing good.
Yeah. Early
Wow.
on, I was a little bit nauseous and things like that, like the common, symptoms and whatnot. But other than that, it's just been probably since 10 weeks or so, like 10, 12 weeks, I've just been
Heck
coasting
yeah.
on through.
Well, I don't know if it's gender related, if it's a boy or girl. Personally, for me, I had a girl and I had a really smooth pregnancy. Like,
Yeah.
the only reason I knew was because I didn't get my period. And I was like, something's off. Let me just go check. And I checked. And then I checked again and again because I got a 3-pack and they all said yes. And I was like, no way.
How much time did you wait in between taking all 3?
Like an hour. My husband was in the living room and I had gone to the bathroom and I did it. And I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I had this like superstition, whatever, something that like whenever my period was late, usually I'm right on track every 28 days. But whenever it was late, as soon as I would take a pregnancy test, I would get my period like literally that day, maybe the next, but like immediately. So my period was getting really delayed. And I was like, I feel like I'm getting cramps. So it should be coming. And then it wasn't. So then I was like, let's just go get the pregnancy test. I have this thing. As soon as I take it, it'll start. He's like, okay, whatever. And then I took it. And I was like, wait a minute. That's never said positive before. And I was like, this is wrong. Like,
Yeah.
And then I was like, I'm glad I got a 3-pack. So let me just go ahead and pee. And we were just watching some show in the living room and I got all 3 done and I just came out and I was like, here we go. But my pregnancy with my baby girl was really smooth. And I only got sick for like 2 weeks, that like morning sickness, kind of nauseousness. But aside from that, it was really smooth. I mean, I got awkwardly like big and wobbly towards the end, of course, but I was really lucky because I didn't experience those like getting sick from certain foods or not being able to eat certain things. So I don't know if it's a gender thing, but like maybe the girls are smoother. I don't know.
I did have a lot of food aversions with both. So like
Really?
certain smells and things like that really kind of like stopped me from eating a few things. But with my first, I also couldn't stand just general smells. Like we had to pack up anything that was scented in the house just because I could smell it from across the room. And it was just so strong. And like I couldn't stand like if people had like a lot of perfume or cologne on or things like that. Like it was just so sensitive to any sort of smell.
Did you notice? Because for me, I had a little bit of scent aversion, but I think I notice it more now that she's out. But like, I feel like my nose is just like spot on. Like if there's a shampoo, if there's a fragrance, if there's a detergent, I'm like, who opened what and where? And like, I can smell it, which is, I just got a nose. I feel like a dog. I feel like a hound. I'm just like, Who's doing what in here?
Yeah.
But I feel like it lingered. I don't know if you develop a mom nose to like smell the diapers from far away. To be like,
Right.
it's
I
time.
don't know. That's really like interesting because like I had a really kind of like sensitive nose. I get like I can smell things like in generally like a lot better than most people. Like I'll be like, oh, I smell this, and then it will be a little bit later, and then they can smell it, or like I'll smell something and it's like the smallest little thing of that. So like I have like hyper sensitivity to like smells as it is.
Yeah.
And then pregnancy escalated that. And I don't know if it's any more now, but like, yeah, like I can smell dirty diapers as soon as it happens.
It's like you're peeing right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations on your second baby. Was this unexpected? Were you planning for this baby or
Yeah,
just
both
life?
of them we were planning. My daughter, I was surprised at how fast it happened. Like we were kind of like, okay, like we're ready to start trying and maybe it will take a while, things like that, and it happened almost right away.
Wow.
Like as soon as we were going to try. And then this time around it was a couple months of trying until we were successful, but it wasn't like anything extensive.
How far is the age gap between your babies? How old's
They'll
your
be 2.5 years apart.
Okay.
So Rosie, our first, she just turned 2 in August.
What a cute name.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's adorable.
And then this is going to be Isaac.
So, cute. When's Isaac due then?
In January.
Okay. So, yay. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you're going to have the holidays. You're going to get that through. And then.
Yep. And then he'll be here.
Very cool. How was your birth experience with your baby girl? You mentioned that your pregnancy was fairly smooth. How did you go about your birthing experience?
Yeah. So I wanted to do completely all natural, like unmedicated, everything, like went in with the, notion that was what was going to happen. And my water broke first. Like that was the very first thing that indicated labor. And it was a whole week early. So I was completely in shock. I mean, this was like something that nobody kind of explained would happen. Like they were like, oh, your water won't break. And like usually first time moms, it's going to be like your due date or past your due date. Don't worry. So when my water had broke a whole week early, I was in complete shock. I was like, what's happening here? Like, what's going on? Like in denial, 100%.
Yeah.
And so like we proceeded to go to the hospital and I was like, okay, I guess this is what we do, right? Like my water broke, we need to go. And like at that point I had started to feel some contractions, but it wasn't anything major. When we got there and they checked me, I wasn't even a centimeter dilated. So I was just kind of like, okay, like, what does this mean? And obviously, like, they wanted to keep me there because my water had broken. And we stayed there for about 15 hours and like completely unmedicated. My contractions had picked up, everything. I was really feeling it. They checked me and I was only maybe like 4 centimeters. So I was pretty like defeated and just like, oh my gosh, like this is taking forever. And like, what's going on? And so I did end up getting the epidural after about like 15 hours. And then another 10 hours had passed. And I believe I had gotten up to around like 8-9 centimeters and just kind of stalled out. And so after 24 hours of being at the hospital and like my water had broken and everything, we had elected to have a cesarean. So
because it's just taking so long. There's so much that's going on. You poor thing had just been in there.
Yeah. I was exhausted. I had not, because my water had broken at like 3 a.m. or so. And so all night, like I didn't eat anything. And then like just all day I didn't eat. I wasn't sleeping the whole time.
Of course.
I was completely exhausted. Even after the epidural, I wasn't able to sleep because my like anxiety and nerves and everything were just like still so jacked up that I was nowhere in the position. They were like, oh, take a rest. Like, it's okay. Like, try to sleep. And it just wasn't happening.
Yeah. Well, because you're just so hyped up on everything that's going on, and it's so unknown. Like people tell you kind of what it's gonna be like, what you can expect, but it's not until you're actually going through it. You're just like, I don't know what's ahead of me. Like everything is dark. I don't know what to expect. What if it happens when I'm asleep? I had a worry that what if my water breaks when I'm in the shower and I wouldn't know? So I called up my doctor and I was like, what do I do? They're like, no, you'll know. And I was like, what does that mean? And then I did know, because I was actually, we were expected due date was on the 20th, but she was born on the 14th. So on the 13th, my water broke at 6 a.m. and I just went to my husband like, I think my water broke. Like, I think so. Like, I just wasn't sure. But then it kept going. So then I was like, this must be it. But it's weird because I feel like, and maybe it's like the Hollywood movies, you know, where you see them like, my water broke. And they're like, gotta go. They gotta go right now because the baby's coming. And within like, you know, in a movie, it's within a minute, then the baby's there. So you think it's such an urgency. And then when I called, I was like, my water broke. They're like, what, 6 a.m? You could probably get here around noon, maybe 2, 4, you know, we'll figure it out. I was like, is that what we're doing? And everyone seemed so nonchalant about it. And we did it at the hospital. So I was like, is this normal? You know, I just, where was more of that conversation? I feel like that's what I wanted to know more, is that there's going to be so much waiting. I guess.
Yeah. Because even after my water had broken, I had probably sat on the toilet for about a half an hour before, like I just continued to stay there. And I was like, am I still peeing? Like, what's going on? Like, and then I finally like called out to my husband, who was just like, we had like an ensuite in our apartment. And I was just like, hey, and he shot right up because like he was in like hyper mode at that point too. And he's like, what is it? I'm like, I think my water broke. Like, I'm not really sure.
Somebody commented on Facebook, my water broke with my first at 38 and 5. Couldn't believe it. It's wild. I was thinking also, when my water broke because I kept peeing or the water kept leaking, I took my baby's newborn diaper and I just like made that like a pad and I was just wearing the diaper because it just kept going. Like anytime I would like sit, it would go. And then they told me not to get to the hospital till later. So I was like, I don't know, it's absorbent. Like, let me just put them to use and just walk around in this diaper. And I don't think anyone told me that like for the first 2 days, you kind of live your life as a baby. Like they're in a diaper, you're in a diaper, they're hurting, you're hurting. Everyone's kind of hungry because no one's eating. Like, I don't know. I wasn't prepared. I also, for me, I brought an apple because I wanted to snack. And then they got mad at me because they said, no, you can't be eating. So I was like, dang it.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah.
Where do you get the energy to keep going? And I've heard some pregnancies are like 20, I mean, not pregnancies, but labor is like 20 hours over that. And you're just like, how
that was, after over 24 hours, I was just kind of like mentally drained. I had not prepared myself for that at all. And I was still kind of almost in that denial phase. Like I was like, is this really happening? Because it was a whole week early. And I was also kind of like texting and communicating with some family, and they were making bets on like, oh, if like she comes before midnight, like I win. And so like, I felt pressured. Like I have to get this baby out. Like people are expecting me to birth this baby. And so I had to put my phone away at one point and just kind of like try to focus on like what I needed to do in the moment. But it was just like a whole different experience that I had not, like, I mean, we took a birth class. We had done all of the things that, like, you know, you do. I was like reading, expecting books and such. And it was just like a whole different experience that I was not mentally prepared for.
Yeah, I actually struggled with some of the expecting books because I feel like because they want to give you all of the options of things that could happen, I found some of them kind of terrifying. Like some of the chapters, I'm like, that's what could happen, you know, and instead of just focusing on a healthy, good birth.
Yeah.
I was having a lot of anxiety of what could go wrong, which I guess in your case could be good because then you are more prepared for that kind of situation. Because I'm guessing weren't at all thinking you were going to have a C-section or any.
No, not at all. I mean, like I said, I wanted to go completely natural as much as I could. And so to have to make the decision to have a cesarean in the end was kind of just like a huge emotional roller coaster, because it was not something that I had planned. I mean, like 24 hours prior to that, it was not even something that crossed my mind.
Yeah.
So to be like in that position where they're kind of like, hey, look, like, and I was spiking a fever. Like there was a lot of stuff that was going on that was kind of like also a little hush hush. Like they didn't want to like scare me or anything of like things that were like going on, but it was like, hey, like we're going to suggest that you consider the cesarean. Like things could escalate, things could go like this route. And, you know, it was just kind of like, okay. Like, and so like, I even waited after they had kind of suggested it. I waited another like hour or so until I had made the decision. And then they started to prep the OR. Cause I was like, well, maybe if I waited out a little longer, things will progress and whatnot. And I think it was like progressively getting worse.
And it's scary. I mean, you're, especially being in the hospital, I think for any situation, even if you're just like there to pick somebody up, just being in that setting and everyone's really official, walking around with like this urgency that like whenever they present you with some sort of a problem or a solution, you're just like, it's overwhelming to take action right there. And the time is of essence. So you're just like, I got to make a decision right now, but I'm considering all of these things. And I think that's a big part of motherhood is like, you have this kind of plan, you draw it out and you're like, this is what I'm going to do. And then life just kind of throws things at you and you just have to figure it out. You're like, all right, it was this plan, but now I'm going to go this direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think trying to learn of like, how do I not feel bad about it? Because I, at least for me, I question myself every decision that I go. I'm like, maybe I should have done different. Is this going to affect me? Is this better for me or better for the baby?
Right.
And then when other people jump in with their opinions and advice, and then you have these people, even small notes or suggestions of people were, you know, like, oh, if they were born on this day, it's going to be my birthday and we'll have same birthday. And you're just like, should I try to hold this baby for your birthday like that? Now I feel it's so minuscule. It's so small, but like it sits in the back of your mind and like adds up until like that whole stack falls over. But you're just like, was I supposed to give birth on that person's day just because they said it? Like, it's so.
Yeah. Like I said, people were holding bets on when she was going to be born when I was in the hospital. And I just had to kind of like block it out. And we didn't even, at least I didn't. I know my phone was like completely gone at that point. I don't know if my husband had informed any family or friends that we were heading in for the cesarean, or we just waited until after and then, you know, had shared photos and everything of her. And I was confident in my decision, you know, like I was like, okay, like we both discussed it. We went through like all the scenarios and we were like, okay, like this is how we're moving forward. This is like the decision that we're making. And I was, you know, completely fine with it, was like coming to terms with it. I was exhausted. And afterwards, though, after we had told people how she was born, it was kind of like, oh, I'm so sorry. Or like, I know that's not what you wanted. And it was like all this kind of like buildup of like, I don't want to say like shame, but it was just like judgment. Like, it was just a lot of kind of like comments of like negative feelings on how she was born.
Like feeling bad for you.
Yeah.
That's silly to think about because you know, I'm sure you understand and you can see how from their point of view, it's something from such a loving place, and, you know, and they're just trying to perhaps be empathetic and relate to it. But like, it almost comes off of like, you didn't do it right. Sorry, it didn't happen the way
And like they never asked me how I felt about it. It was just kind of like they were putting their opinion or how they thought like I was perceiving it onto it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Was it your friends mostly or your family as well?
I guess it was kind of like a mix. Like, I mean, most of my friends were very kind of like understanding. Like they were like, oh, I would do the same thing. Like, especially like with the epidural and everything, they were like, girl, like if I was in labor that long, like I would have done that too. Like it's completely understandable, things like that. But yeah, it was just like a mix of people just kind of, and that's one thing that like I try to do now with other moms, like when they're going through a situation, I don't say like, oh, I'm so sorry, or like that must feel like this. It's kind of like, oh, well, how did you feel when that happened? Or, you know, like, how was that for you?
Yeah.
And I think like leaving it up to them to decipher how they felt about a situation is so much better and so much more comforting than like telling them how they should feel about what happened.
Absolutely. I think when they do like police investigations, the cops aren't like allowed to ask questions a certain way because they will lead the suspect to answer like in that tone almost, or, you know, and it's similar in a conversation because once you hear everyone kind of asking you like, sorry you went through that, you know, like just being really apologetic about it and like feeling sorry for you, it's like you start changing your mind, whether or not, whether it was your option or your like choice to do it, you just start thinking like, oh, well, if everyone is saying it this way, perhaps I did it wrong. And you start questioning yourself.
Yeah.
And that decision and that questioning leads to you starting to question other things. Cause you're like, well, I was really certain, but now that I'm getting this kind of feedback.
Yeah.
What else am I uncertain about? What am I doing wrong? And when I've experienced that kind of thing from me, it causes to shut down. Like, I don't want to reveal any more information because then I'm like, what are you guys going to say about this? Like, let me just keep it to myself. And you just, you know, you become alone and you're just like, let me just be in my own cocoon because this is the way I do it. And I'm worried about this mom shaming, this judgmental,
which is like such
attitude.
A horrible thing to like do when you're in that like postpartum period. Like, you need those people to like hear you. You need to like talk about your feelings. You need to like express certain things. And when you're feeling like, you know, judged for decisions that you've made, or maybe somebody's like very adamant on, you know, a certain way or a certain thing or something, you're like now scared to talk to them because you're afraid, like, or you're like, oh, well, I do that. So like, how are they going to feel if they find out?
Absolutely. I really struggled with that. Like when I hear other moms, like hearing your story, I'm like, okay, I'm not alone. Like I tried to have an all natural birth. We checked out all the options. And when my water broke, we made it to the hospital. I was in my head, I was like, I can do this. And I had a little bit of pressure because my mom did it naturally. And she's like, you can do it. And I was like, all right, my mom did it. I can do it. And then like 6, 8, 10 hours into it, I was really struggling. It was so painful. And then I started shaking, like uncontrollably shaking. My fever went up. The nurses were worried about my heart rate, and the baby's heart rate started going way up and spiking. And so they started talking about other options. And I'm so thankful that my husband was by my side, and he was very gentle with me about it because he knew I wanted to do it naturally, but he made sure to express, he's like, if you want to get epidural, don't feel bad about it. You're not doing anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with it. It's for your safety, the baby's safety. And we discussed it and we decided to go with the epidural. And I'm so thankful that we did because it made my experience of birth almost enjoyable, if you will. Like I have this memory of first waiting and being kind of miserable and in pain. And then once I got the epidural, it was just going through the motions. And then they said, push. And I was like, I got this. I was like doing crunches. I was like, let's go. Is it out? I was like talking to him. I was like, what's it look like? He's like, there's a lot that's going on there. Like, ooh.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know how much there was going on until, you know, you come home and you recover. You're like, oh, there's a lot that's going on. But once I experienced it, I had a couple of friends who were having birth like a few weeks after me, and they had also planned natural birth. And I just tried to gently say, if you change your mind in the middle of it all and you get the epidural, just don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. Don't think about what anybody else said. Think about you being in control of your body, not having the anxiety of like being in pain or anything like that. If you can do it natural, go for you. We're all different. Like, heck yeah. But if you think that that's going to make things better for you, then you make that decision. You stand by it. Even though that's the sad thing is that there's this like taboo shaming of if you can't do it. And I feel it this way overall in motherhood, where it's like people try to cheer mothers on and they're just like, you're a mom, you're doing everything, you do it your way, this and this. And then at the same time, they're just like, well, you're not doing it this correctly. And well, I did it this way, or so-and-so did it this way. And so you can never do it right, and you're always doing it wrong, but you're always kind of doing it right because you can do it your way. But it's also like, you're just like,
yeah.
What am I doing? What's anybody doing?
Yeah.
But I felt a lot of that pressure with the epidural. I felt guilty when it was kind of, when I was going through it and a little bit more afterwards, I was feeling guilty, and I was trying to figure out, I was like, why do I feel this way? If it's for the safety of me and my baby, why do I feel this way? And then, you start thinking, I'm like, how is it that I am so affected by other people's opinions who aren't even in the room,
right?
Who aren't going through what I'm going? Like, they're literally not at all anywhere near this situation, yet their opinions cast so much shadow on my own view.
Right.
And then I started thinking more about it, like how in general as a person, I allow so many people to affect how I think, like I'll think something and then I'll kind of backtrack. I'm like, oh, shouldn't have said that. Never mind. People are angry. But it's so silly because everyone's always, do what you want to do, say what you want to say. Yet as when you do and it doesn't agree with them or align with them, there's this judgment that's really like hard to swallow. Because you want this like community, you want this tribe, especially with moms, because you're like, well, you're going through the same thing that I did, you understand it. And then getting that just kind of heavy judgment, it just feels, I don't know, high school, middle school, like mean girl. You're just like, never mind, my lunchbox isn't as cute as yours. Like,
and all that just like starts to come back, and you're like, well, why is this happening? Or why am I feeling this way? Or like, what's going on? Like, and like, it's very hard. Like, I think before I had a cesarean, like I was kind of like, oh, I'd never do that. Or like, I couldn't imagine. And like, I think now after the fact, I'm like, oh, I get it. Like, I get that there's going to be scenarios where people have that.
Yeah.
And I think that's like what it is. It's like being able to flip your perspective and see it from that other person's side. And that takes like a lot of work, and it's a lot of like dropping your own judgment. Cause I think like a lot of times when people are kind of like you said, like saying like, oh yeah, do whatever you want, but like, don't do that. Like, or like, there's like very strong opinions, especially when it comes to like motherhood and raising our children, or even just like, how we're going to be like, oh, like that's not safe, or you shouldn't do that. And, like it's hard to kind of like get out of that mindset of being like, I mean, like some things are not safe, I guess.
Sure.
Like,
no, absolutely.
like there's like a limit to like, I think like overall in general, there are like common things that we can all agree on. But, as far even like breastfeeding or co-sleeping or whichever, like, you know what I mean? I think it's just like a matter of like having respect for that person's decision.
If their baby is safe and happy, like it shouldn't concern you almost. Like similarly, like whatever you eat should never concern me. Like if you're just eating whatever you're eating, good for you. The other day, I really like beets. So the other day, I just ate like a can of beets. I had some goat cheese with it, and I ate a can of beets, and I was very happy about it. And my husband's like, of course you're eating beets, a whole can of it. But it doesn't bother, like it doesn't matter what I eat.
Yeah.
It does to a sense of like, I want to make sure I get all the nutrients in. So I'm just like pumping all the greens I can and add like chia seeds and all this stuff, because through my breast milk, my baby's getting it. So of course, in that way, it makes sense. But like, in no way does it ever affect me what your diet is. I would want it to be some sort of healthy side because I want you to live longer. But at the end of the day, you're your own person. You're making that choice. And so we kind of understand that, as humans, we're just like, oh, so-and-so eats this, so-and-so eats that. And that's just eating. That's not even like whatever. And so, but it's silly when it comes to how you choose your path as a mother. people really want to jump on. Granted, you are raising a whole new society. So it's like, well, if my baby's going to be friends with your baby, I would love for them to be, raised in a good manner. But I don't think it's my position or my place to tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
But people love offering the unsolicited advice.
Mm-hmm.
I was really sick of it. I was really sick of it when I was pregnant and everybody just kept telling me things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like the opposite of that too. Like, I mean, our daughter's like super sweet. Like she says like the cutest things sometimes. And I honestly think it's her personality. I think it's them as individuals. Like we'll get compliments like, oh, like, she's so smart or she's so talkative, like things like that. And I'm like, okay, yeah, like she's doing that though. Like there are some things that we can guide them or like lead them on or do certain things with them to like interact with them, encourage those things. But I think ultimately, you can have two kids that are completely different and you've done the same exact thing to it. So I think like we also have to like remember and consider that like they're their own individual. They're going to do their own unique things. And like, that's just the way it is. Like, I mean, like even going out in public or something. And like, if parents are like, oh, like you need to control your kid, like they're going to just yell if they want to. Like sometimes she just likes to scream. And I'm like, okay, go ahead, girl, like scream. Like, and she's excited or she's having fun. Yeah. And, like I think just allowing them to do those things rather than like, don't do that or you can't do that, like it's just going to make you feel better too. Because if you're constantly having to like correct them or whatnot, or you're getting like anxious, like, oh my gosh, like my kid's so embarrassing right now. Like,
but it's like sad that there's those expectations. And I'm the same way. Like my baby she has this war scream right now, especially late at night. She's like, like it's so cute. And I'm like, go for it. You're screaming. Right. I'm going to scream with you. Like I encourage it, express yourself.
Yeah.
And it's, we have these society rules, these cultural, social rules that people need to abide by. But then you're like, first, let's see, like, this is a child. Like, they have their own personality and they should be able to express themselves. They should be able to get dirty. They should be able to just scream. Like, you should be able to talk to your child. Like, if they're screaming and like, I don't know, stabbing people, there's, let's put that away. But if they're playing on a playground, that's what they should be doing.
Yeah.
That's what they should be doing. And like, I don't necessarily fully agree with like the public school system the more I'm learning about it, because it's those expectations. They expect all the kids to learn the same way, which is by memorizing and then writing it out. And then you memorize, you write it out, and you memorize, you write it out.
Yeah.
And I was really good at school because I was really good at memorizing and then putting it down, and then I'd forget it. And then now I'm learning something else. But I had some friends who just that's not their way. And it makes sense because we all learn in such a different way. And so when we're tested the same way, it shows that some people are excelling and some people are failing, yet that's not the truth. It's just the way we had learned the information is different. And so we should learn it differently. And so same with how we behave. Not that everyone should be running wild. That's not what I'm saying. It's just like, but we shouldn't expect everyone to behave the exact same way.
Right.
And the embarrassment or the guilt, we talked about during the pregnancy or birth, the fact that we realized it and consider it then, I think it's helpful because now as we're raising our babies, we can be like, okay, I don't want to feel that guilt from anybody else and whatever they're saying. So I want to focus on me and my baby and how we're going to be and what is it that my baby needs to succeed. And I want to be there to help them instead of worrying, okay, if I'm at the store, what's that girl saying while she's looking at me? Or what's this mom saying over here?
Yeah.
Like, give them that freedom to be themselves. Because as I felt, like a little shame and guilt because what people were saying, I don't want her to feel that way because I'm passing it now onto her. Like, that's not fair for her to carry any of my stress or anxiety or worry.
Yeah.
Especially when you think about like, usually people who pass that stuff on is when they're insecure, they have their own trauma. They're, people who are busy doing their own thing don't necessarily have time to just go and talk smack or express, rude opinions to others. So it's people who are jealous of you in some way or feel insecure about something.
Right.
So it's like, technically those opinions shouldn't even matter. But then you're taking those, and if you start considering them and then start passing that on to your child, like it's triple generational almost guilt that, like, I don't know, your baby has no reason to carry with them. They just want to run. They want to yell. They want to play with food. We have a whole thing like our baby just loves playing with food. And everyone's like, don't let her play with the food. I'm like, play with your food. Like when you're older and you get it, that you need to eat it, like eat it. But now it's fun. So like get after it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been eating dates lately.
Yay!
But I kind of like cover them in chocolate. So I had the spoon of chocolate the other day and I gave it to my daughter and I was like, go at it. Like, here's a spoon of chocolate. Like she was licking it, got it all over her face, like completely just loving it. And I was like, this is great. And like it got on her shirt, but like, I was like, we can wash it. Like, you know.
It's just clothes. You know, I had somebody who, because when she eats, she kind of gets it on her shirt and everyone's like, well, she should wear a bib. And I was like, well, I can just wash her shirt like I'm going to. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
I understand that it could be easier and some people like it. And if you do that, cool.
Yeah.
But we're fine if she gets it on her shirt. Wait, really quick. Can we talk about dates? I'm so obsessed. I think they're like the nature's caramel. They're so ooey and gooey. They're so sweet. And they're like packed with so many good things. And I feel like people don't know about them. And I want everyone to try dates. Because I'm like, where are you people on the dates?
I don't know what it is that I just can't, like, when I eat a whole one, I don't know, like if it's the texture or something like in my head, like I can't like full on just like eat a whole one. But if it has chocolate on it, like even just like a little bit drizzled, like I'm like, okay, like all for it. And like Rosie, my daughter, she loves them. And I'm like, okay, girl, like, you know, like she'll be like, more dates. And I just like put a few on her plate and she'll just eat them whole. Like it's the best thing ever. And I'm like, if she likes it, I'm not going to tell her that I have a problem with it.
I didn't know that you didn't necessarily not like them. I, like your daughter, absolutely love them and eat them as a whole. But I understand that the texture is off.
The flavor is fine. Like I don't know what it, like I get it in my head that.
Well, they're like a dried big raisin almost.
Right.
And they do it to like preserve them and to keep them. So I first kind of learned about dates. I was looking for this recipe. It's Gordon Ramsay. It's like this ooey gooey toffee melted cake. And it calls for a whole pack of dates. And so it's like that and like a little bit of brown sugar. But when you eat it, it's so good.
So are they like chopped up and like in the cake
you
or
put
on top?
You put it in the food processor so it becomes part of the dough.
Okay.
And so that sweetness and that meltiness, because it's just like minuscule pieces now, it just melts. And it's so good. And it's the sticky toffee pudding. And you just like, it's so nummy. And I was like, why is it like that? And it was literally the dates. And then I just started snacking on them. Like, I was like, oh, okay. I agree with you on the texture that they could be more inviting because they're just like, and when they're not pitted, it's just annoying to get the pit out.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of work for not, you know, it just doesn't make sense. But when I looked into it and how much nutrients they have, they are packed.
Yeah.
And I'm just like gobbling up dates.
Yeah.
It's not, it's an obsession, but I want to share it with others because I'm like, everyone needs to eat
They're
it.
good. Yeah, we got like a big, like full-size bag, like pitted and everything from Costco.
Pitted is the only way to go. When we did the non-pitted, I'm like,
because it is like a lot of work, and they are like sticky.
They're sticky.
Like, they're sticky.
Yeah, and I don't want to get the finger sticky and the whole thing. But if you're into cooking, highly suggest looking up Gordon Ramsay's sticky toffee pudding with the dates because it's so good and it just melts and then it's caramelly. But like,
I'll have to look that one up.
It's almost good for you because the dates are so beneficial.
Yeah, I've made like little like protein balls like with them all chopped up. So like instead of like sometimes like they'll have it with like chocolate chips or something like that, but I use the dates and I think it's really good.
I've seen a couple of recipes of those like, I don't know, they're like protein balls, granola balls. There's different names for them. And I haven't made them yet, but every time I see them, it's like this really cute post, you know?
Yeah.
It looks really good. And I was like, I think I need to get in on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've used, it's like dates. I'm allergic to nuts, so I use sunflower butter, but you can use like peanut butter,
Love
almond
that.
butter, like anything like that. And then oatmeal. And then if you have like any kind of like protein powder or something like that. And like
Yeah. I'm
I think
such a
that's
fan of
basically it.
sunflower butter.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the
It's
other,
really
whoever's
good.
listening, get in on sunflower butter.
Yeah.
It's
Maybe
also
I should
so
try
beneficial.
the dates just dipped in the sunflower butter. Maybe I'll do
There you
that.
go.
Yeah.
I do a chia seed pudding where you like make it overnight, but it has the chia seeds, oat milk, and then I cut up dates, so they're just chunks
Yeah.
of it. And I do like 3 of them in there, and then a spoonful of sunflower butter, and then mix with some bananas, mix it, and then leave
Okay.
it overnight. And then in the morning, I eat it, and then now my daughter eats it as well. She gets a
Yeah.
spoonful and just goes to town on it. But it's like
Mm.
all the superfoods kind of jammed into one
Uh-huh.
that make a
Yeah.
solid breakfast. So highly
Yeah.
recommend that.
Huh. That sounds good.
Yeah. Want to talk to you more about just your after your breathing. Did you do breastfeeding or did you do formula? How was your
Yeah.
nursing and
So
feeding?
yeah, it went really good. The only thing is we did develop thrush, which
Mm.
is like bacteria and everything like in the baby's mouth. It was like on her tongue. And then so I had gotten it on my nipples as well. And so like I thought it was just like they hear like you hear like, oh, like it might be like painful when you start like breastfeeding and things like
Yeah.
that. I thought this was just normal, and I probably like let it go on for 2 weeks or so, and it just got to the point that like even my shirt rubbing up against my nipples was painful.
Mm.
And I had gone to the doctor and I'm like, I don't think this is normal, like and they prescribed me like I guess like antibiotic or something, like me and her for
Mm.
10 days, and it just went away. And like if it's like painful or anything like that, or like your nipples are like red, like that's not normal. Like, and I
But it's
wish I
hard to
didn't.
know.
Yeah, like I wish I didn't wait as long as I did, because as soon as we got like the medication, it was just like gone and away, like right away.
That again probably comes back to feeling bad because when my nipples were hurting from breastfeeding, I was like, well, everyone said they were going to hurt a little bit. So I'm just
Right.
not being tolerable. Everybody else did it.
Yeah.
So I just need to wait a little bit longer. I just need to wait a little
Yep.
bit longer.
Yep.
So it's good to know that you need to I just learned, and this is on TikTok, so we don't know if this is true or not. But this mom was saying that after breastfeeding, you're supposed to like wet a rag and then wipe the baby's mouth to wipe their mouth. Since they're like brushing their teeth, you're supposed to wipe their mouth to
just like take the milk out.
I guess. I've never done it. So I'm
Yeah.
not saying it, but this mom was like, hey, I'm just this years old when I learned this. And I was like, nobody told me about this, but this might be
No.
true.
Yeah.
Because I mean, breast milk is packed with nutrients, its own sugars, whatever it has in it.
Right.
But nobody in the hospital, nurses, anybody I talked to ever mentioned that you're supposed to like.
Right. And I would think it'd be good to leave in the mouth or anything, because even like they say you can use breast milk, like my daughter had like some like baby acne and stuff like that. So like I put some on her face, and like if you have any like scratches or cuts and things like that, like they say use breast milk. And so I would think, it's not.
That's where I land on it, because it's like the magic liquid.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, it seems like the best thing to have in the mouth. So I don't know.
Yeah. I'll have to talk to some like lactation consultants and stuff about that and see what they have to say.
I would want to know, because then I'm like, well, the way she explained it, and then of course I like went through the comments. I'm like, what are all the other moms saying? And people seem to be on board. They're like, yes, why didn't you know this? And and I was like, you guys are having a whole conversation and I'm just learning about it. But
sometimes I wonder like those things on TikTok, and people are like, oh yeah, like everybody knows this, but it's like a joke, and it's like it's not true, but then they're like encouraging that it is.
It's hard. It's so silly, because I feel like within the last year, TikTok became like the news media source, where even sometimes I'm like, I read this. Oh wait, no, I didn't read it. I watched a TikTok.
Yeah.
But you're like, this information that we pass on is true immediately. Like as soon as we see it, we're like, well, I saw this on TikTok. And it's like,
it must be true.
So who are your sources? You just see that like anyone can make up anything. And like, as long as they sound, like they know what they're talking about, you're like, this is right. I'm going to do that. And you're like, wait a minute. No, that's wrong.
Yeah.
I was going to mention for the breastfeeding, when I started breastfeeding, I wasn't doing it right. And we had the lactation consultant who came in. They're like, if your nipple's like the lipstick form, then they're not latching on correctly. Make sure like the whole thing goes in. And what I wish somebody would have told me, and I don't know if this is right, but this would have helped me. My breasts were so like engorged with milk and ready that they were like hard as a basketball. And so she couldn't latch on the full amount.
Mm-hmm.
And so that part started hurting. And I was having such a hard time. I'm like, I don't think any milk is going through because she wasn't actually able to like latch on appropriately. And I wish somebody would say, like, if you just pump a little out, so then the boob becomes more movable, then I would have been able to like stick it in there and do the whole thing. But I was just trying like just the nipple. And I was like, I don't think this is right. Then it became painful. Then she wasn't getting any food. We had a situation where it was her third day home and she was just crying. I was like, she's hungry. I know she's hungry. I know I'm not getting the right amount of food. At the hospital, they're like, even if it's a drop, then she's fed. And I was like, I don't think she's even getting the drop. Like, I don't think it's happening. And then at 4 a.m, I had to text my mother-in-law and I was like, can you please come over and pick up some formula? I need to feed this baby. I don't know what else to do. She's been screaming like I'm at lost. And I was feeling so guilty. I'm like, I'm supposed to be breastfeeding. Now I'm feeding her for formula. I'm doing this wrong. But I was like, I just need to make sure this baby's fed. And so we switched over to formula for a couple of days. She was fed. And then I had to pump because I was just engorged. And then once I pumped out, my boob became normal. Like, not the hard thing that like
how early on was this?
So the third day home, she received formula. So she had formula like third, fourth day. And then I had to pump that morning because I was just like, I'm going to erupt. But I wish I would have known to do it earlier to soften my boob because the whole time I was waiting for her to do it. So I was like, I don't want to pump because I didn't know how much milk is in there.
Right.
Because only a drop had come out. So I was like, I don't think it's ready. And I'm fairly like large breasted in general. So I was like, oh, it's just my boob. There's probably no milk in there. And I was questioning the whole thing, but it was actually full waiting to come out. And if I had just pumped a little to make it flow, it would have been fine. And once I pumped and figured out that my boob changes how tight it is and then it can move, then things started to go. And I was like, oh, we're moving. It's just, it was so tight that she wasn't able to like
latch on.
Hitting a basketball with her head. You can't like latch onto that. And I didn't put it together because I was the whole time feeling bad. Like, well, I just kept putting her on my boob. I'm like, you got this. I got this. We're going to sit through this. We're going to sit through this. And it wasn't happening. And I was like, I can do it. Everybody else is doing it. Why am I not doing it? And just feeling bad. And the whole thing was just to get it started.
Isn't it crazy, those things that like we kind of find out after we go through it and then we like beat ourselves up like, oh, like why didn't I do this sooner? Or why didn't I think of that? And it's like, because like it didn't occur to you. And like, I remember like 3 or 4 days, like postpartum, like they just got huge. And like you said, like super hard and it was painful. And I was like, what is going on?
Yeah. I felt like I was going to explode.
You're just like, when your milk comes in, it's just like,
it lets you know. And I was like, well, it's here and you're kind of doing what you're doing, but it's not happening. There was this miscommunication. I'm glad we figured it out. But I feel like with the books and the people in the classes, they tell you certain information that kind of prepares you for it. But then it's almost like the things that you needed to know somehow didn't make it in the conversation. Is there anything that you feel like you should have stuck to and did longer, or anything you didn't do now that you look back on your first pregnancy that you're thinking about now with a second baby that you're like, hey, I'm going to make sure I do this a lot more, or I don't do this at all? Like, is there anything that...
Yeah, I mean, definitely mentally preparing myself. I think I have gone through like such a huge shift since becoming a mom, and just like the level of anxiety or worrying about things or caring about, like, how we were saying, like what people think and everything like that. I think that level of what I used to feel has dropped so much, but like in a good way, that I'm like super excited for this time around because, I think it comes down to, trusting yourself and really being confident in the decisions that you're making. And I think, you know, I feel a little bit more like, because I'm already a mom, like I can say, oh no, we're going to do it this way. And I have that like confidence to be like, well, you know, we feel more comfortable doing this, this, and this. And like, I feel like people can't kind of like not give their opinion, but like, oh, okay, well, she's done this before, so maybe she knows what she's talking about. It's going to be a lot more easy to kind of like explain why I want to do something because
kind of gives you
I've
credibility.
already done it. Right. Yeah. Because I think like the first time, like it was like, oh yeah, like that's nice and all. We'll see how long it lasts. And then like I had done it because like I wanted to, you know, breastfeed as long as we could. And like I was very adamant on waiting, you know, 6 months before solids and things like that. Like, and I kind of got like kickback of like, okay, like we'll see what happens. Or like even just like her birth weight in the beginning, like birth weight for breastfed babies is different than the chart that they kind of like show you or compared to formula fed babies. So like their birth is, or their weight is on their own schedule, like their own chart, their own thing. And, you know, like I was kind of lacking that confidence because I had never done it before. So when somebody kind of suggested like, oh, like, how about you supplement, or, oh, it's fine if you give them this or that beforehand. I kind of like took those words to have like a lot more impact. Yeah. But now that I've like been through it, seen it done, know that like she turned out okay. Like I feel like it's going to be easier to navigate those difficult decisions. And when you have all those external factors coming in, it's a lot easier to kind of like stand by your decision.
Yeah.
So
I think you're really spot on to that with the having that confidence, because that's what's kind of lacking when you are first giving birth. And so when you hear opinions, you're like, well, you're a mom, or you're like, you're my mom. So obviously you know something, and you start listening to the advice of others because you're like, well, you're obviously more experienced. You've done this, so you must know more. Yeah. And you start doubting yourself because you don't have that confidence. And it's knowing that you are able to stand strong behind your opinions and say, no, this is actually how we're going to do it, and not doubt yourself, which is so hard at the beginning because you don't know. Yeah.
Or you think you don't know. I think like that's something that like I wish a lot of moms were more kind of like confident in their intuition or what they're thinking or what they're feeling, because I think a lot of the times we do know, we just think we don't. If that makes sense.
Well, it's really common in just in general life to kind of seek approval. So whether it's an opinion on how the dishes should be clean, you're like, well, I do this way, you know, you do this way too. Okay, cool. And I'm doing it right. And we forget that, like, especially with motherhood, like the intuition inside of you, like once I had my baby, I was just, there's certain things that I knew. I don't know why, but I knew them. And when sometimes people are like, oh, she's fine. I'm like, no, she's not fine. She's really anxious right now and she needs to go lay down, or you know, she's fine. She can be awake. I'm like, no, she's needs to go to sleep. And I know that. But I didn't have the proof to be like, this is why I know that, which is unfortunate, because you shouldn't have to provide anyone with any proof to be like, this is why I have the credibility to say that, you know, like, we should have to feel like we have to defend ourselves. We shouldn't, as mothers, have to feel like, oh, I must be a second time mom to be able to give opinions. But I agree with you to the point of trusting yourself and trusting those instincts to be like, just look in a little more. And if you hear that little voice, if you hear it in your heart saying like, you should rock your baby, you should hold him, you should nurse him, or you should go into solids or don't go into solids. Like, you can see your baby's behavior and what their needs are. Like, I think moms and their babies just have this unspoken language where you just know what they need. and you see it in relationships once people spend so much time together, you just start talking without actually talking. And this is literally a part of you. This is somebody who, like, you're just so in tune that I don't know why we forget that, like, you know, your kid, no matter what anybody says, this is your baby.
Yeah.
And you should trust that.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the times, like, I would get, like, when she would be fussy or crying or everything, they'd be like, oh, she's hungry. And I'd be like, she just ate. Like, she's not hungry. She's just, like, uncomfortable, or she doesn't like the way that you're holding her, or like she doesn't like a smell or a sound or something. Like, there's so many other things of why babies can be crying. And, like, they would just be like, oh, like, either she's hungry or, like, she just wants you. And, like, some people would get kind of, like, frustrated at, like, not that she was, like, dependent on me, but I think, you know, like, when they do come out, they do kind of seek that familiar scent and that comfort from the mom. So, like, yes, she's going to be more comforted when I'm holding her than, like, when she's going to a stranger.
Yeah.
So, like, I think people just kind of, like, they're like, oh, like, you know, she doesn't like to be held by me because, like, you don't ever let her go. And it's like, no, like, she's 2 months old. Like, she doesn't want anybody else to hold her.
Yeah. I hit a little bit of that where somebody was, you know, like, oh, you're not letting her be independent. She's not going to be separating from, you know, you're just enabling her. You're spoiling her. And I'm like, she's a month. I was this way until she started to crawl. I'm like, if she can't get away, if she's uncomfortable, she has no way of expressing except for crying. And then sometimes people are like, oh, it's fine, she'll stop crying. Like, no, she's expressing a discomfort.
Yeah.
Whether it's with the person, I think scent is a big thing. We had some people who came over and were wearing really strong perfume, and she flipped. And I was like, please don't hold my baby right now. It's not you. It's just whatever's going on. Like, it is. And I can, you know, with the nose, we talked about smelling things earlier on. Yeah. So you're just like, it's not you, but it is your scent. But I mean, if you were somewhere you didn't know anybody, even if you go to a party, let's say you're going to a party, you don't know anybody except this one person you came with, you're going to hang with them for a little bit till you get warmed up, till you start out the conversation, you get to start talking to other people. Like, that's just the norm. Yet, like, a baby who doesn't know anything, everyone's like, let's pass it around like a hot potato. Like, no, the baby just got to this party. Right. Let the baby hang with me till it gets to know you. Like, we're not cool yet.
Like, you know, like, after certain amount of, like, stimulation and stuff, when they're that little, you know, they're sleeping constantly. Like, maybe they're only up for a half an hour. They're only alert for a half an hour. So, like, you can't be offended that, like, a baby's not going to, like, giggle and laugh with you when they're a couple months old.
Yeah. It surprised me when I received certain comments like that from those who are mothers, that because every time, like, didn't you have a baby? Like, don't you remember how it was? Like, because I get it from strangers, you know, for people who don't have babies yet. Because you just want to hold the baby. It's exciting. It's like holding a new puppy. And you're just like, yeah. And you want to see it smile and do all the cute stuff because you see the mom do it. So you're like, I'm going to do it too. And you're like, ah. But those who are moms and they have that expectation, I'm just like, I don't know. I find it in a way disrespectful, and I know it's wrong of me, but I'm like, you're a mom. You should know this, that, like, the baby isn't against you, but the baby just needs her mom right now or his mom right now. They just need it. They don't have.
Yeah.
I just always felt bad. I'm like, she can't get away if she wanted to. She can't crawl. She can't talk. So the only thing she can communicate with is, like, certain looks she gives me. And if I'm not there, I can't get her out of the situation. Like, if you're at a club with your girl and she doesn't like the guy she's talking to, she's eyeing you to be like, yo, girl, save me. Save me. And you're like, I got you. Okay. And you grab her hand. You're like, gotta go to the bathroom. And you, like, peace out. And, like, we do that as adults. But then as a baby who can't do anything is, like, eyeing at you, like, please, mom. Like, I need you right now. And the person's like, no, they're fine. I'm just like, no, just let me talk. Somebody just commented, sorry, I'm 31 and sometimes I still just need my mom. Yes. Right? Like, it's just comfort. Like, we know them. It's your peace. It's your home. You know the scent. You know that, like, it's just home. Your mom's your home.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I'm all for like, you know, like cuddling and stuff. And like I think those like first initial like months even still too, like I was so connected to her that I was like fine sharing her, but to a certain degree. Like I was very much like I didn't want to be detached from her for a certain amount of time. Or like I would have people come and like want to hold her and I'd be fine with that, but then they'd walk away. And I'd be like, where are you going with my baby? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like all those like mama bear emotions, because like they're literally, I mean, like right now, like he's in me, I can be with him constantly. But like they think like the second that they're out, that they're just like up for grabs. And like, I just remember like one time specifically, like like somebody was like, oh, like it's my turn. And I was like, no, it's my turn. Like I need my baby back. Like I need to feed her. I need to be with her. I want to cuddle her. Like I haven't seen her. And I think like people just think that they're doing you a favor by holding them. And it's like, no, like that separation is so strong sometimes that like
It's
you're
painful.
just all these emotions and you just want to like make sure that they're okay. Even if it's just for like a 10-minute, like quick little like hold. And then it's like, okay, you can take them again now.
Yeah.
But like that was never something that I felt like I needed help with. Like if people came over to help or like do things or whatever, like they're like, oh yeah, I'll hold the baby. And I'm like, that's not what I want help with, or like that's not what I don't mind holding her. They're like so itty bitty and like they just lay on your chest anyway.
Yeah, I struggled with that at the very beginning because it's so kind of selfish. I wanted help on my own terms. So I would want somebody to hold the baby so I could do things like shower or go to the bathroom. But those are the only times that I needed someone to hold the baby. Aside from that, I always want to hold my baby and be with her, but I do need stuff done. So if you want to help, taking my baby away from me isn't helpful to me. It breaks my heart. I feel incomplete. But if you do want to say wash the dishes or vacuum while we have a conversation, I'm so for it. I'm not asking you to do chores, but to take a part of me away when I'm not ready to do that is painful. And then it kind of flips because then when they want to come over again, you're just like, no, that's okay. Like, we don't need to hang out just because that first interaction was traumatic almost. Like they take that piece from you and you're just like, you want to share the baby, but I struggled with it because I'm still not ready to let go. And the longest time I go without her right now is just this podcast that I started.
Yeah.
But I'm always with her all day long and then all night long. I know every breath, every move, everything, and it makes me happy. Like I'm needy like that. I need to be with her. And I understand that other moms do it differently. But when people think that they're helping, I would ask those who are listening, if you want to help a mom, ask how you can help. Similar to like with experience, don't assume that a birthing path was wrong or not wrong because it's not what you wanted originally. Ask, how was it? How did you feel? How did you feel? How can I help you? Like just ask, because and at certain times, yes, I want that help for somebody to hold the baby because I need a break. But that's not the case all the time. Sometimes I need other help.
Yeah.
And it differs. So if people who want to help moms, just ask because we probably have an answer. We've probably already been thinking like, I need to do this or I need to go to the bathroom. You know, we already kind of know, but maybe I don't know. I'm not always secure, confident to ask for help. But and when people offer me help, I feel bad because I'm like, that's not the help I need.
Yeah.
And so I struggle balancing it out. I'm trying to get better at it. But taking the baby isn't always the answer. Most of the time isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like another thing too, like how you said, like, oh, like, like just ask the mom. And like sometimes, I think we don't know what we want. And that's something that like you have to kind of like think about for a while. And that might not be a bad thing. And it might shift, like from pregnancy to postpartum. It might be like you think you need help or you want to help with like this, and this. And then baby's here. And now like we were saying, like, it could be you want to hold your baby. It could be you take the baby. Like I need time by myself. Like I want that like isolated time. And so like I think just asking yourself what you want and be ready to prepare a few things for people coming over to tell them what you want. And then like, don't be afraid to ask for what you want or to kind of, you know, set boundaries and guidelines and things and such, because if they are truly there to help you, they're not going to be offended if you're like, no, like I really need help with the dishes, not holding the baby, or like, okay, yeah, hold the baby, I'm going to go shower. Like they're going to want to assist in whichever way they can, if that's what they're truly there for.
I think you're spot on. I think you're spot on. One is knowing what it is that you need help with and asking yourself. But I think, because I think the way I expressed it earlier is like, it's annoying when people ask for help. And I don't mean it that way. And I hope nobody hears it that way. Because as moms, we of course always need help. And I think what you're saying is spot on, is we don't know exactly what we need. And so I think it's both people. So the mom, as a mom, I need to ask myself, and I need to work on this 100%, because sometimes I have these expectations of whether it's my mother-in-law, my mom, my husband, more so because he gets the short end of the stick because I have these expectations of him, yet I haven't communicated them to him yet. Mm-hmm. And so he thinks he's helping. And sometimes I'm like, why would you do that? But he's doing it from such a loving place and he thinks he's helping because I haven't expressed to him what it is that I actually might need. And that's so important. And he wants to help. So as soon as I do tell him, sometimes I'm like, hey, can you grab this? He gets so happy. And I'm like, why are you so happy? And he's like, I know how to help you. He's like, I always want to help you. I just don't know how. He's the sweetest. And I have those moments where I'm like, I need to remember that. And then I forget.
Yeah.
But he wants to help. Like you said, the people who do want to come over and they want to help, they just don't know how. And so those who want to help should ask. And moms should ask themselves, what would help you today? And it might be different than yesterday, and it might be different tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it changes all the time. And I think, that's something that I was realizing probably about like 6 months postpartum. And I was literally just like down on our bedroom floor, like crying. And my husband's like, how can I help you? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I literally don't know. Like, I was so burnt out from like everything that was going on. And like, I had gone back to work 9 weeks postpartum. And
hey, sorry, I'm going to have to cut it short. I got to go help my baby.
Yeah, no, so, I completely understand.
Thank you for tuning in to me. I'd love to talk to you again if you have time. But we'll schedule something. Sorry to cut it short, though.
No, I get it completely.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to me, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Bye, Sarah.
See ya.